Welcome to another episode of the brand called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished professional, a successful podcast host from Nashville, Tennessee, USA, Dr. JJ Peterson. JJ, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Dr. Peterson is an author, he's a speaker, and he's the host of a podcast which is titled Badass Softy Podcast. So, my first question for you, JJ, you've had a remarkable career from academia to best selling author to podcast host. What moments most shaped your journey?
There have been so many. My father was an incredible storyteller. And I was able to watch him from a very young age control a room. And I don't mean just like control it in a bad way, but
Yeah.
really own a room
Mm,
with both being soft and being loud. And I would watch because he was just the most amazing storyteller. And I
mm,
began learning from him at a very young age how to tell stories.
amazing.
In fact, when we were children, we would go on road trips with my family. And, I think many families listen to songs or sing songs.
Mm,
My father would put in a tape that had storytellers on it. There was a man named Garrison Keeler,
mhm,
and we would listen to those stories all the time. So from a very young age,
mm,
I was fascinated by stories.
mm,
And that, I believe, really shaped a lot of who I am today. So I began studying stories and I
mm.
began to see how stories worked.
Yeah.
And my PhD is actually in narrative theory. And
Wow.
my master's degree is in theology and the arts. It was a study of film and television and
Mm,
theology involved in all of that. And because of that, I ended up, moving into, I worked in Hollywood for a little while. I did some acting and I did storytelling. I became a professor where I actually taught communication.
mhm,
And then ultimately now moved into a place where I help companies and leaders really tell good stories with their brand.
mm,
Uh, for the past 10 years, I've really been working with companies and marketing agencies all over the world, helping
mm,
them use the power of story to tell good marketing, get good marketing out there.
mm,
And most recently, I've moved. I continue to work for StoryBrand. I'm with StoryBrand. My title at StoryBrand is professor in residence.
mhm,
So I continue to work there, helping companies do that. But I've began kind of branching out on my own, and now beyond just helping companies clarify their message,
mm,
I actually help people live and leaders, thought leaders, live more authentically as the leaders that they were meant to be.
mm.
And that is still through storytelling principles, through understanding your own point of view and what role you play as a leader in the story as you go out and share your wisdom.
What a great response. Thank you. But tell me, why do you believe clear messaging often outperforms even the most inspiring speeches?
Yeah. I get this question a lot because, I think a lot of people think when you're a good storyteller, what that means is that you're entertaining and you can get up on a stage and people will love you.
Mm,
And while there is an element to that that is true, there is some personality and things that you can even learn about being, engaging. If you actually want to make a difference in
mm,
people's lives
mm,
and move people forward, you need clarity.
mm,
And why I say that is because from a marketing perspective, depending on what research you read, we receive between 3 to 5,000 commercial messages a day.
yep.
3 to 5,000. That means there's a lot of noise coming at us, especially now in a world with AI. We have more and more messages coming at us all the time. The messages that break through are messages that clearly articulate how a product or service or a thought leader
Mm,
can help change people's lives.
Mm.
Now, here's where it gets kind of a little nerdy for me is that so my PhD was in narrative theory. And
Mhm.
what I wanted to know was, is story and marketing, using story in marketing, powerful? Does it
Mhm.
work? And the quick answer to that is yes. It's actually the most effective way
Mm.
to engage people. It's not about features, it's not about a brand look, it is about story, the powerful use
Right.
of story.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why that is true is because research shows that when we as people experience a powerful story, we experience what's called narrative transportation. We
Mhm.
put ourselves into the story.
Mm.
And the research shows that the higher level of narrative transportation somebody experiences, the higher level of
Mhm.
influence that story has on our thoughts and
Right.
actions. So
Right.
stories can actually change us. However, there's two key things that make that happen, help narrative transportation happen. And by narrative transportation, what I mean is you've probably experienced it if you've ever been to a movie or heard a story, and when something scary happened, you jump, or
Mhm.
when something funny happens, you laugh, or when
Mhm.
something sad or happy happens, you cry.
Mhm.
You've experienced narrative transportation. You've put
Mhm.
yourself in that story.
Yeah.
Now, there are a number of components that contribute to having higher levels of narrative transportation, but the two
Mm.
main ones are, can the person, the audience, see themselves in the story? That's
Mhm.
really important for narrative transportation. The second is what's called fidelity and
Mm.
coherence.
Mm.
Does the story make sense and does it stick together? So when we talk about clarity, how clarity will win in the marketplace,
Yeah.
clarity wins in a marketing story. What we're really
Mm.
talking about is, can your audience, can your customers see themselves in the
Mm.
story?
Yeah.
And does the story make sense?
Mm.
If those two things don't happen because your story is unclear, then narrative transportation goes down, which
Yeah.
means the influence of that message goes down.
Mm.
So it's a little, I
Yeah.
get a little academic
Uh,
with it, but that's
Absolutely.
really like
But
the
what a
research
great
shows
response.
clarity wins.
Absolutely. What a great response. You also worked with brands like Microsoft and Tempur. Um,
Yeah.
what common communication mistakes do even these large companies tend to make?
The first one is this is the thing that I think I've realized a lot recently is we as a company often hear our own message
Yeah,
5,000 times.
correct.
We are so close to it that we think, oh, well, we need to make this more robust. We need to make it more, put in more details because
Mm,
we get bored with our own message,
mm,
right?
mm,
We're like,
mm.
oh, we've been doing the same message for 10 years.
Yeah.
The reality is, most of your customers, especially new ones,
Mm,
are maybe hearing your message once or twice. So what often happens is companies look at their own message and they go, it's too simple. It's too
mm,
simple. We need to add something more, or we need to make it more sexy. We need to make it
mm,
more flashy. And the reason they're doing that, I believe, is because they're bored with their own message.
mm,
They've seen it for 20 years.
mm,
The customers have not. And when you change your message, the only way I believe you should change your message is to make it more simple and more clear,
mm.
not more complicated, or change the name or change the brand. That's
Right.
not neat. When we repeat our message over and over and doing is we're actually branding our
Mm,
company into the
mm,
brains of our customers.
mm,
When we change our message all the time and when we change our brand, we start to lose that place in our customer's mind.
mm,
Also, the mistake that ends up happening is we try to complicate it. We try to change it and make it too fancy.
mm,
And this happens from everybody from huge companies down to the very small companies.
mm.
Just because you're bored with your message doesn't mean your customers are. If your
Correct.
message is clear and
Correct.
compelling, double down on it. Don't
Mm,
change it. Don't make it more complicated. Make
mm,
it easy for your customers to recognize you and recognize why they need you.
mm. Very well said. And how can organizations cut through noise and build genuine connections with customers?
There's a couple things right now that I'm really working with companies on and thought leaders. The first is you should always have a point of view.
Mm.
Here's the thing about AI. AI will never have its own point of view.
Correct.
It can only get its point of view from you as a company or as a thought leader. So you have to know what message you're putting out there, why you're putting it out there, and how to connect with customers.
Mm.
So some of the things that I work on with companies specifically is what problem do you solve
Mm.
for your customers?
Yeah.
That is really where the foundation of your message starts. If you
Correct.
don't understand how
Mm.
you solve a problem for your customers or how you solve it differently than your competitors,
Mm.
you are going to get lost in the noise.
Mm.
You're the, with the AI marketing, the generic messaging that's out there. So your job as a leader, as a business, is to curate a point of view that goes into AI to create messaging and emails and create things faster.
Mm.
And then your job is to curate what comes out.
Mm.
Do not just trust your message to
Correct.
something that doesn't have its own point of view.
Correct.
You curate a message going in, let AI create, and then you curate coming out. That's what
Mm.
helps you create a point of view and break through the noise. That's the
Mm.
first thing. The second thing, again, in this AI world, is the way that you show up is as a guide. The way you
Mm.
show up in a story is as a guide. Now, most companies, they think that when it comes to their messaging and marketing, they are the hero of the story. We need to make ourselves the hero. We are not the
Mm.
hero. Our customers are the hero. They need to be able to see themselves in the story, like we
Mm.
talked about with narrative transportation. So they
Yeah.
need to see themselves in the story.
Mm.
So, in that order for that to happen, they have to be the hero of the story. We need to show up as a guide.
Correct.
And the way we show up, again, which is a way that differentiates from us from robots, is
Mm.
with empathy and authority. Empathy is I understand your problem.
Mm.
Authority is I can show you my experience, my human experience of where I've helped other people solve this
Mm.
problem.
Mm.
So, one, have a point of view, understand what problem you solve.
Yeah.
Two, once you understand that and begin communicating it, show up as a guide with
Mm.
empathy and authority. And
Mm.
then, third, the last thing that I've really been kind of studying a lot lately is this idea of joy.
Mm.
Joy is actually pretty incredible when it comes to messaging, authenticity, showing up as yourself.
Mm.
The research shows that when people experience joy because of somebody else, that person is deemed more trustworthy.
Mm.
That person is deemed more connected, more memorable. So, a lot of times, I think when we think about clarity, what we're thinking about is showing up and being like, bop, 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 just facts and just
Correct.
clear.
Correct.
But the
Correct.
reality is, when you show up as your authentic self and
Mm.
bring some of your joy, your
Mm.
humanness to the world,
Mm.
you actually become more trustworthy and more memorable.
Mm.
So, the thing now, I was saying I've been working for the past 10 years helping companies just with their message and their websites, and that's been incredible. And I'm continuing to do that.
Very
But
interesting.
now in this new AI world, what I'm really helping companies and thought leaders do is shift a little bit.
Mm.
It's not just about your story. It's
Yeah.
having a compelling point of view,
Mm.
showing up as a guide, and then showing up with joy. And when you
Mm.
do that, that actually, like the research shows, your message, your personality will actually have a higher influence on
Mm.
people in the marketplace.
Very interesting. JT, let's now talk about your podcast, the Badass Softy Podcast. You
Right.
describe your podcast as being for leaders who are unapologetically ambitious and still lead with a heart. What does this
Yeah.
phrase mean to you personally?
You know, I think for many years, I showed up in meeting rooms, in boardrooms, and I tried to lead or emulate leadership like other people in the room. So
Mm.
if they were hard, I showed up hard. If they were soft, I showed up soft.
Mm.
And both of those things, I learned a ton from those type of leaders.
Mm.
But I began to realize that that is not me. This is where the point of view comes in, right? Is that I was trying to be like other people. And when I was younger, that actually works. When you're young in leadership and in business, I think it's important to look to other leaders and try to, in many ways, emulate their voices because they are more wise. They are ahead of you in the game. But as you mature in leadership, you need to develop your own point of view. And what I began to realize is that I am incredibly ambitious, but I'm often not ambitious in the way that I see in a lot of other leaders, which is step on people as you get to the top, which is, just be brutally honest all the time, which is walking around and saying things like, you don't get into leadership to be liked. And while some of those things are true and
Yeah.
helpful, I don't think they're helpful for me as a leader because
Yeah.
that is not, but I have learned to be incredibly ambitious, to do more than I ever thought could do by having bigger dreams. But the other part is this idea that what the research shows is that when leaders are emotionally aware and they create a safe environment for their teams, that those teams are more creative, more innovative, stay longer, and actually are more productive. In fact, talking about joy, we often view joy as something that is a reward for the end of the work, right? Like if I'm a teacher in a classroom and my students are laughing, I will catch myself often going, all right, everybody, that's enough. Settle down. Let's get back to work. It's like, stop being
Yeah.
joyful
Yeah.
and get
Yeah.
back to work.
Mm.
And what the research shows is that joy actually elevates creativity and inventiveness. It also allows us to recover faster from stress. It decreases inflammation in our body. It
Yeah.
allows our immune systems to be better. So when you show up, if this is who you are meant to be, when you show up as your authentic self with joy, with caring for people, and joy doesn't just mean laughter. Joy is about whimsy. Joy is about adventure. Joy is about completing hard things. Joy is about relationship. When you show up and allow those things to infuse your ambition, that are not separate, that being soft and being ambitious, they're not separate. When you infuse those two things together, you actually impact the world even more. And that's what I want to do. And so that's why I created the podcast Badass Softy, where I interview leaders who I see as doing this. And my hope is that more people are free to lead the way that they want to lead and be incredibly effective at it. And so I do that with a podcast. And then, like I said, I also do that just with my consulting as well.
Very interesting. And how can leaders create a culture that restores uh, and empowers people instead of draining them?
Yeah. So the big thing I think I would say for that is that it is the things that I mentioned earlier. When you have a point of view and you know what you're trying to accomplish, it gives your team direction.
Correct.
When you show up as a guide with both empathy and authority, people trust you. They allow you to lead in their story because the guide in any story is the most powerful character.
Correct.
The old wise sage who comes along to help the hero win. That's, in Harry Potter, it's Dumbledore. In Star Wars, it's Yoda. When that character, that wise character comes along to help the hero win, they're the strongest character and everybody wins. But you need both of those things, empathy and authority, for people to trust you, right?
Absolutely.
If I show up and I am mean to people, so I have no empathy, I don't understand where they're at, then people lose trust in me as a leader because they don't feel safe. But if I also just only show up with what people are calling toxic empathy now, and it's just all about hugs and all about crying and all about, letting people get away with everything, then you also lose trust. You have to have empathy and authority. So showing up as a leader with both of those things creates a safe and comfortable environment for your team. And then lastly, the joy piece.
Correct.
Understanding that, yes, it's not all about, you have to be driven, but one of the ways we find joy in life with purpose is by accomplishing great things as a team.
Mm.
So it's not just like that, it's let's have fun and let's laugh.
Yeah.
But as a leader, when you can allow for space for relationship to happen, adventure to happen,
Mm.
whimsy and laughter to happen, that
Mm.
is part of the work.
Yeah.
But one of the greatest ways that people can experience joy
Mm.
is when they overcome hard things with other people.
Mm.
That is actually from a man named Viktor Frankl,
Mhm.
who studied how people achieve purpose and find purpose in life. And one of the ways is by being a part of something that is bigger than themselves.
Mm.
So when you actually push your team to do big things, to dream big, to be ambitious, but do it with space for laughter, relationship, whimsy, you actually will not only accomplish more,
Mm.
but your team will find purpose, fulfillment, and meaning, which means they will be more creative, more
Mm.
inventive, more
Mm.
productive, and stay
Mm.
longer.
Mm.
They work together. It's not opposite, they work together.
Mm. Amazing. JJ, I have time for two more questions for you. My next question is for you. Uh, you handle so many different types of roles, you work with so many different people. What daily habits or mindsets help you stay grounded as you lead and teach?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The first is very practical. When I am traveling a lot, and when I am working a lot, like because when I work with companies, I'm standing for 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
I'm teaching for 8 hours a day. I have to be very focused. The first is very practical.
Mm.
I have to stay hydrated. I know that seems like
Correct.
something that
Correct.
is, but what I have discovered
Yeah.
is that when I drink water, that actually my body feels better, my mind feels better, I can accomplish more. So
Mm.
one thing is just that really two things that I'm really positive about. I need to have good
Mm.
shoes so my feet feel comfortable, and I need to stay hydrated. So that's the practical side of that.
Absolutely. And that's great
But then the
advice.
other
Yeah.
thing is
Mm.
what I'm coming back to again is a gratitude journey. So this has to do with the joy piece of things. That when we pause at the beginning of the day or the end of the day to reflect on the good things that we are grateful for in our life,
Mm.
this is not a woo-woo happy, kind of thing. It's actually in many ways tricking your brain into a more positive level of thinking and invites more joy.
Mm.
And it goes back to all of that thing that I was mentioning earlier. What the research shows, when you do this, when you focus on things, instead of focusing on all the things that are going wrong, you don't ignore those things.
Mm.
But what joy and gratitude does is it allows you to power through those things
Yeah.
and recover from those things better. That's actually the power of gratitude and joy.
Mm.
So part of my daily practice now is, and it's not always where I have time to sit down and write. This morning I got up
Mm.
early, way before my children were supposed to be up. I was planning on journaling, and then my child got up and was throwing up.
Mm.
I did not get to my
Correct.
gratitude journal in the way that I get to
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
pause and write everything down.
Yeah.
However, I did take some time to just pause and say, what am I grateful for today?
Mm.
And that has helped reshift the way that I think about life. And ultimately, again, helps me be productive and purposeful in everything I
Mm.
do.
How interesting. And my last question for you, JJ, given the amount of knowledge you have, what trends in leadership and communication excite you the most in the next few years? Also, taking into account the fact that there's so much AI and so much technology.
Yeah. I think I mean, obviously, I am very excited about AI. Even
Yeah.
when I'm talking about being more human in a world of AI,
Mm.
I'm very excited about AI and for two real big reasons. One, it just in many ways makes life easier in the sense of a lot of the tasks or especially repetitive tasks that
Mm.
are in my life, I can outsource to to AI, and I can allow that to help me be more creative and open up my space to be more human.
Mm.
So the first part that excites me about AI is it actually takes a lot off my plate.
Mm-hmm.
The second part is, and this is where I believe leaders who are going to succeed in the coming years and businesses who are going to succeed in the coming years are those who lean into their humanity.
Mm.
So what AI should do is not replace humanity. Should allow us to be more human. And I think if you use AI as a way to replace our humanity, you're going to get lost in the noise. You're
Mm.
going to continue to shrink. But if you use AI to become more human, to take the things off your plate that take us away from our relationships, that get in the way of connection
Mm.
because we have to sit down and take care of our taxes or do, all the things.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm.
have to edit software, edit videos that really takes us away from people.
Yeah,
We now can use AI to do those things very quickly and
correct.
allow us to be more human. So
Correct.
the trends that I'm looking forward to in light of AI, not in spite of AI, is one, it allows us to offload some of those tasks that take
Mm.
away our humanity.
Yeah.
And second, lean into our humanity in a whole new way.
Mm.
And that is a trend that I'm excited to see grow and help more people succeed.
Mm. Amazing. And on that note, I just want to say what a fascinating conversation this one has been with you, JJ. Thank you for speaking to me about your own journey. Thank you for talking to me about the importance of messaging, about the importance of communication, and of course, how a lot of these fit back through your podcast into leadership and moving forward for so many of my viewers and listeners. Thank you for speaking to me,
Okay.
and good luck to you.
Thank you so much. This has been an incredible conversation, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.